Let's talk.
Charles Brown.
Dianarama is the story of one of the biggest scandals in public life and broadcasting history, and of the cover-up that followed to hide what happened. Andy Webb is the writer and award-winning filmmaker who obtained the secret files that first broke the story of Princess Diana's betrayal. I'm delighted to say that Andy joins me live on the line this morning. Andy, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good to have you with us. Explain to us a little bit about your particular role in uncovering this scandal.
Okay, well, of course, the famous interview with Princess Diana, November the 20th, 1995. So the whole thing is 30 years. You know, we're talking about a saga, a scandal that's lasted for 30 years. I'll try and keep my role as brief as I possibly can. I started investigating what had happened in 2007, put in some freedom of information requests to the BBC, and I have to tell you, the BBC initially replied by lying, and that sounds pretty harsh, but that's what they did. They said they had no documents relating to any investigating they'd done themselves into the scandal. Let's leap forward very, very quickly. Over the years, after 2007, I continue to investigate and find out more and more. It comes to 2020, which is then the 25th anniversary of the famous interview. Now, in 2020, I made a documentary for Channel 4 television in the UK, and it was during the making of that documentary that Charles Spencer, Diana's brother, effectively revealed to me notes that he had kept of his dealings with Martin Bashir that really revealed the whole tawdry saga of the lies that Bashir had told in order to hoax Diana to appear on the Panorama programme. That's a very quick run-through of, something that has taken 30 years to unfold.
I mean, do you think this is a case of one... It's not just a case of one journalist, Martin Bashir, wanting to sort of big up his profile, get an exclusive interview. This is also a tale of a corporation not wanting to face up to the truth and the cover-ups thereof.
It is, and I think for me that has always been the really, really disturbing side of this. And I say that because Martin Bashir was it has to be said, an enormously skillful but an enormously unprincipled character. He knew what he wanted and he knew how to get it, and indeed he got it. The problem then was when his bosses at the BBC became aware that their man had used forged documents. They became aware that he'd deployed his forged documents, he'd used them, and he'd then lied about it when questioned back at the BBC. Now, they knew all this, but they did not go to Princess Diana and brief her on those things alone, the forgeries and the lying and so on and so forth. And the bosses didn't do that. And I've always thought that is hugely significant because at that point, had they briefed Diana, there's a strong case for saying that her life would have followed a different course from the one it did. And of course, a little over 18 months later, she's dead. She's shunned all the people around her who were looking out for her best interests, the trusted advisors, her chauffeur, all of these people are gone, and she finds herself being, well, in theory at least, looked after by Mohammed Al-Fayed's people, the drunken driver, one thing and another. So it's that point when the BBC managers had the chance to step in, and they didn't step in, that I think is hugely important.
Because, I mean, this is the famous, there are three of us in the marriage, isn't it? This is where this quote comes from, which really sets off, a maelstrom of shock, of accusations. And, it's 30 years ago, but, I mean, if this would happen today, maybe we would be a little more aware about the consequences, and B, what Diana, Princess of Wales' mental health and fragility was at that point, because we now know that she was, and her family have made this point again and again.
Yeah, I think so. And all you need to do is to put some modern language around what happened here, you've got Diana then was 34 years old, so she's the 34-year-old single mom. I mean, let strip away all the royalness and the princess, etc. So you've got a 34-year-old single mom. She's targeted by this predatory male who is Martin Bashir. He, if you like, to use the modern terminology, he grooms and he gaslights her, he terrifies her into a certain way of thinking, and then he coercively controls her, if you like, into performing the interview that people saw on Panorama, which really wasn't an interview at all. It was a performance, a double act, which Diana had been unfortunately persuaded to perform. So that's what happened. I mean, a youngish woman, vulnerable, not unintelligent by any means, not unintelligent, and I would argue not paranoid either. That word, I think, is unkind. She had, after all, been assured by the British Broadcasting Corporation, by a representative of the BBC, who came with what he said were genuine documents provided to him by MI5. Now, in that event, I don't think you have to be paranoid to believe what you're told. So that's the situation. That's who Diana was and where she was at when she gave this interview.
When you were sort of filming your documentary, the one that came out, was it 10 years ago now? I mean, you had a frank discussion, so we say, with Earl Spencer. All of us will of course remember Spencer's eulogy at the funeral of Diana, and he was somewhat forthright with you, wasn't he, on the eve, or was it the morning that you were about to show your documentary?
Yeah, I mean, the documentary was 5 years ago, because these things seem to... No, not at all. They go in these sort of 5-10-year cycles, for anniversaries. But no, it was literally on the morning that the documentary was due to air. And people will appreciate, when you make a TV documentary, it takes months. And, it has to be... completed and technically, verified and signed off, etc., etc. So it's not something that you can radically remake on the morning when it's due to go out. But the reason why I got this phone call from Charles Spencer so late is fascinating in itself. But anyway, no. So on the morning of transmission, Charles Spencer calls me. And really, for the first time, I think, to anybody outside, presumably a small family circle, his own family circle, unfolded this extraordinary story of how Bashir had approached him and Diana and had come out with what were 32 really extraordinary claims, lies, including things like Prince Charles was planning to have Diana murdered, planning to have Camilla, obviously now Queen Camilla, planning to have Camilla murdered as well. Why? Because Bashir alleged Prince Charles was having an affair with the nanny that he had employed, a lady called Tiggy Legg Burke. All sorts of other things. Bashir alleged that the Queen, the late Queen, of course, Queen Elizabeth, was due to abdicate in 6 months' time. He claimed that Prince William had been given a special sort of James Bond type watch which could bug or record conversations in the room. All of these things. Charles Spencer had, it's important to remember, he had tried to bring this to the BBC's attention before. He had written to the BBC, he'd written to the Director General of the BBC in 2005 and said, look, terrible things happened during the interview. I've got documentation on it here in my office, and his letter to the BBC was entirely ignored, completely ignored. And as I say, in 2020, it turned out I was sort of hearing this stuff for the first time, and quite soon after, the BBC then very belatedly began to take some action and instituted their own inquiry.
Because, Bashir, I remember him, he was one of the golden, he was almost some of the shining stars of the BBC at this point, leading up to this point. And, this is how he could get such an interview with Diana. And you describe him in the book as pathologically, compellingly charming and ruthless. What I find also interesting is here we are with the BBC. He's sort of, when it all breaks and it's all found to be, a complete pack of whatever, the BBC sort of go into almost like a shutdown mode, or what they do, they farm him out, and then he's sort of given gardening leave. Would that be correct? So, in an age where we've had this sort of thing with BBC presenters, albeit in some cases in lighter forms rather than hard news being tended off, it is quite disturbing, isn't it?
I think it's hugely disturbing. What you described, their way of dealing with Bashir, they had to deal with Bashir twice. They had to deal with Bashir soon after the Panorama interview in 1996. And the way they deal with him then is, although they discover that he is a fraudster, he's used his forgeries, and he's a liar, the way they deal with him is to effectively elevate him and praise him and allow him to continue. And that's, I think, absolutely shameful. Now, in 2021, they have to deal with Martin Bashir again, he having been found guilty of various things in the official inquiry. The way they deal with Bashir at this point is not to dismiss him or to sanction him in any way at all. He was just allowed to quietly retire on the grounds of ill health and retire into the background. And again, I find that staggering, and I think a lot of other people do as well. And I love the BBC. I worked for the BBC for the best part of 20 years. I don't criticize, quotes, the BBC. I criticize very, very harshly certain individuals at the BBC who, for my money, are literally driving the corporation into the ground. Into the ground.
Yeah, the word I've heard recently being used by others is spineless at the moment, because of they're not going to stand up for the principles, and it's easy enough to sort of, kick this can down the road for the next Director General or the next board or whatever.
Yeah, that is what they have sought to do. Back in 1996, it was quite clear why they kicked the can down the road, because had they not kicked it down the road, those very same bosses would instantly have been fired themselves. So they had a strong interest in the outcome of events then. Bosses in 2020 and to a degree currently are simply reluctant to exercise what they are legally required to exercise, which is transparency. They are reluctant to be transparent because of the amount of dirty linen that is still to be revealed. And, I think it is going to take a brand new Director General, a brand new chairman who are not tainted by the history of all this stuff to come in and say, right, we're going to do what US presidents say every time they come in, and they're going to throw open the files on JFK, and that is what a new Director General needs to do, to say, right, that's it. We're going to reveal it all here. And it's not just me as a sort of nosy journalist who wants that to happen. The person who wants that to happen most of all, of course, is Prince William.
I was just about to come on to that, because we tend to sort of think of this almost as a time capsule, but it absolutely isn't. And you can trace a timeline from this through to the obviously William and Harry, but especially William's relationship with the press and considerable anger. Yeah,
I think enormous anger, but I think anybody who has sort of studied these events, even at all closely, would see in Prince William, he's now 43 years old, so he is 7 years older than his mum was, Diana, when she died. And I think, and of course, William's eldest boy, he's 12. Now, William, when he had to go through this, when he witnessed this dreadful interview go out, he was 13. So I think, what we've got is William now in the foothills of middle age, if you like, and he has a steely resolve, I think, in many ways. People who I think have seen the way that the ex-Prince Andrew problem was dealt with, maybe kind of detected in the background there, a kind of final no-nonsense approach that we're going to get across this, we're going to get our arms around this. And I think it's been made clear to me that is where William is at as regards this, because he wants to know if there are still secrets regarding what happened to his mother.
When you
Go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say when you first set eyes on these documents that had been sort of kept secret, covered up through the years, freedom of information. I mean, was there shock? Was it excitement? And was there, for yourself, was there considerable anger when you see how this panned out?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, there's been so many documents. So I suppose one's reaction to them, there's different kinds of documents at different times. But certainly, anger over the BBC's consistent refusal to do what the law says it must do, and that is, amongst other things, to be transparent. And the fact is that the BBC has spent in excess of £1 million of my money, license fee money, anybody in the UK's money. They've spent more than £1 million of that money on, attempting to prevent me seeing a certain bunch of emails, which could well reveal the latest stages of this cover-up. And so that makes me absolutely furious. And people, they've said to me many times, "Oh my God, you've kept on pursuing this for 20 years." I said, "Look, I'm genuinely not the kind of loony in the shed, who's got nothing better to do. But when someone keeps lying to you and, just refusing to behave honourably and sensibly, I find it really, really hard to give up. You don't go up and say, well, whatever, do you?"
Yeah, the loony in the shed, the nosy journalist. But this is what we need. John Sweeney says to me, you need to be the guy shining the light under the rock, and that is what good journalism should be.
No, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing as well, I think, which is very, very, I firmly believe is that this is a story, I say as regards the book, and it might sound a bit self-aggrandizing, but it's a kind of, I hope would be regarded as a sort of first draft of history, because I genuinely believe that this story, unlike really any of the, I've covered, some major stories in my time, but this is kind of the only one that I, beyond a shadow of a doubt, will still be being discussed and gossiped about and debated and the subject of academic study and one thing and another, hundreds of years from now, in the way that we all, or many of us, are fascinated by the machinations of the Tudor court, King Henry, Anne Boleyn, Thomas Cromwell, all of that sort of stuff. The machinations of the, let's call it the Windsor court, and who betrayed Diana and why, and did she have to die? All of those sorts of things do have a historical footprint. And that seemed to me one reason to try and get to the bottom of it, as best I could.
The book is called Dianarama, The Betrayal of Princess Diana. It's by Andy Webb, who we're speaking to today. Listeners, you can order it via our own virtual bookstore. Go into the bookstore, click on the front cover, and it will be winging its way to you. Andy, if people want to find out more about you or continue the conversation, do you do social media? Is there a website? Where can people follow what you're up to?
I wish I could say yes to that, but I do have a website, but I'm kind of too busy, on other things to bump it up day by day, but there is a bit of a website there. Yeah. No, I mean, if you go on Google, you'll see stuff for sure. Yeah.
I'm sure you will. That's a double-edged sword. The book is called Dianarama. It's by Andy Webb. Andy, I know you're busy, so thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, no, you're very welcome. Very welcome.